to host Hanru in this setting. I mean, some people can change other people's life without intending, and this guy did a similar impact on my life. I was struggling with curating and part of the curating lab at Kunsthalle, and he energized the whole Istanbul city for the 10th Istanbul Biennial. Literally engaged with a lot of people, created a huge programming, but the most important thing is he brought a sense of optimism, hope, and the trust and solidarity to the scene. I don't know how he managed to bring us together, because Turks, as we are, very complicated, and it's difficult to bring us together. It's not always easy. And thank you, Hanru. We still have a very beautiful memory of the 10th Istanbul Biennial as a space for resistance, for solidarity and engagement. And of course, when I was imagining a program for Sarkis, they are also friends, they are also long-term collaborators, and Hanru several times presented Sarkis at its highest level of quality. And very impressive documentation to Misal revisited, and I thought, this is a magic term, Dazibao, that all the Western world should learn. We should learn to reconsider our idea of democracy. He will tell us, going through the two texts he wrote already, picking up some points, we will have a ping pong, and then eventually we will extend the conversation with Ruth. I don't know if I need to read your CV. I mean, you were former director of Maxi in Italy, dealing with that Zaha construction for making great exhibitions for the last 10 years. Don't steal them. They are Kunsthalle books, but look at them and see the way Hanru works. He's not afraid of sound, he's not afraid of noise, he's not afraid of light, shadow. His exhibitions are such a cacophonic spaces of staging with a lot of objects, films, narratives coming together. He likes to clash things. So, who Hanru?
How should we do it?
What is Dazibao? Let's start with Dazibao.
Okay, let's start with this. I think actually in French, in France, many people know about Dazibao. In fact, actually this word entered into je crois en prénom Robert. Look at your dictionaries. I'm sure Dazibao exists as a French word. You do. Actually, when I talked to Adnan, to my surprise, he said, "Oh, you should talk about Dazibao instead of Sarkis." So I think Sarkis is also the generation who actually adopted the word Dazibao. Dazibao in Chinese actually is this. It's meaning big letters, big characters, posters, or genres. It depends on how you translate it. Actually, it's a form of public critique. It was kind of invented and encouraged in the late 50s, 57, 67, when the Communist Party starts mobilizing, start having some problems. And Mao actually wanted to play the very smart political game by inciting intellectuals, people who have minds, have thoughts, to criticize the party, to improve the party, and improve the rule of the new republic, right? And in the meantime, so he actually asked the intellectuals to talk about the problems they confronted every day against the bureaucracy, against this and that, and to the point that they start attacking the system itself, the communist system itself. And at this point, Mao decided to counterattack. And it's a very skillful political plot, of course. And so Dazibao was actually invented in the late 50s, 56, 57, when the intellectuals are invited to express their opinion in public space. So they would write very big journals or articles. They would write critical articles in very big characters and put it on the walls. In the beginning, it was in the offices, and then in the university campus, and so on. And then during the Cultural Revolution, it was about 10 years later. Mao actually used this technique to, again, mobilize the young people to write critique against the party bureaucracy. So he could actually himself attack his enemies, his rivals, and destroy them by mobilizing the public opinions. So that was a very interesting moment. So you can see in the 60s, and then until for 10 years of the Cultural Revolution, you can see, the Chinese people, they are using this way to. When I was a kid, I was also taught we had to do it in the school, to write critique about, whatever wrong against the system, and of course, most of the time, kind of propaganda repetitions, right? And then you put it on the street or in the campus. And the first contact with artistic action actually is very, very often for our generation is to write Dazibao, because they are not only big letters, but also has to do with calligraphy, and also has to do with making this graphic design, basically. So it was a very interesting training for us to learn how to do art by doing this kind of propaganda papers. And then in the 60s, this actually is a common landscape in China. On the streets, everywhere is full of Dazibao. And then it was even written in the Constitution, in the version of 78, I think, 1978 Constitution. It was Dazibao, together with 4 forms of public debates, are a part of the constitutional right of Chinese people. And then this encouraged people. Actually, when Mao died, there was appearance of, even before he died, there's more and more young people who brought into the question of democracy and against the corruption of the party members and so on, and a real critique, and also some proposals of reform, of transformation of the system and so on. And so in 78 and 79 in Beijing, in the capital, there was another wall of Dazibao, which is now usually called the Xidan, is a street. It's an area in Beijing. The Democratic Wall of Xidan, that's it. And in which there was the first actually confrontation between the government and the post-cultural revolutionary dissidents. So there was a place where it had generated the whole generation of Beijing Sheng and so on. And then in 79, it was very interesting. There was one of the first avant-garde groups of artists. They decided to use the similar wall, street wall, kind of similar format of Dazibao to show the artwork. That was the first Xinxin art exhibition, which was taking place outside on the wall, outside the National Gallery. So there were this, well, actually a very interesting way to see how Dazibao, being a form of public critique, can be used in different ways. And this form of democratic, so-called democratic expression, it's very quickly being adopted by the Western intellectuals in the 60s. And of course, you know, especially French, the French, they were so fascinated by the Chinese Cultural Revolution. So Dazibao, from this moment, was actually brought into the French culture as an official vocabulary. So together as couscous, for example. Well, couscous is in Robert? I'm not sure. For sure. So Nam, couscous, and Dazibao. They're all in the official Robert monopolies. And of course, you know, among the French intellectual avant-garde, the most famous was this, La Chinoise, de Jean-Luc Godard. I don't know if you guys have seen this in school. I think it should be the first class when the students come into the Beaux-Arts is to watch the La Chinoise. I think that will make them, you know, a good beginning. Of course, it's how to say, it's an absolutely comic tragic experience. And then there's even also there are even musicians who are fascinated by Dazibao. So you have the jazz man who actually created this piano, Dazibao, to provide a kind of alternative form of jazz. And there's the famous, I don't know, but at least for our generation, I still remember when I arrived in France in the early 90s, they were still this group, the rock band, Dazibao. So it's kind of French punk, rock, punk band. I don't know if they're still around. And then lately I just discovered there's actually a Belgian pop star who also has an album which was called Dazibao. It was published in 2001. So there was a very interesting way to see, you know, how Dazibao has been adopted as a kind of romantic vision of fighting for freedom of expression. So this already created a lot of fantasy, a lot of imagination, and a lot of misunderstanding as well. So, and then Adnan just said Dazibao in Istanbul. Before Istanbul, actually I had a chance to deal with this, which was La Nuit Blanche in 2004 in Paris. I was one of the directors of the Nuit Blanche in that year. And of course, you know, at the time, Nuit Blanche was actually much less populist than today. It was really a very elitist event, trying to bring kind of, you know, avant-garde traditions to the people, and everybody can, you know, go to visit museums and art exhibitions and installations, performance, very, very often experimental projects, for free during the night from 8 to 8 in Paris. And then that became a kind of international model, actually a model for a lot of international events. So a lot of other cities adopted Nuit Blanche, even, you know, in Asia. I don't know if Istanbul doesn't need the Nuit Blanche person. It's a city of Nuit Blanche anyway. Maybe for Baden-Baden, you need the Nuit Blanche because people sleep early, I think. Anyway, so that was a very interesting idea that I was the director of the third edition, together with Ami Bahak and Nicolas Fries, who's a musician and who's a brother of Bernard Fries. And so I did the program with probably 15 different events across the city. One of these events is called Dazibao. The title of my section was called Midnight Needles, des aiguilles de minuit. Meaning, you know, the idea is really to consider the city as a body. We talk about the city as a body, in which art has a role to play. It's like a acupuncture operation. You pick on some key places, some knots, some places where you have make you nervous or make you relax, whatever, but change your experience of the nerves system. And that is the reason why not only we need public art in the public space, not only we need what we call public art, but what makes it public. It's actually about a kind of acupuncture operation that actually activates the social life, namely the social nerve. So a lot of troubles can be brought out, a lot of debates can be brought out, and that is exactly the moment that every personal, individual opinions can become truly public, because you get into confrontation with the others. So what makes a place public is now, it's open, it's free, it's about everyone can contribute with his or her position, thinking, opinion, emotion, and so on, to come together to confront with the others, to exchange or to fight. And it's very important that, you know, to emphasize that what being public is not about being with the other, but being in relation with the other. And this relationship is very often in the form of confrontation of difference, and the crash of the difference can generate another way of a social contract, another form of social relationship and contract, and to bring a kind of harmony, and then it suggests the next step of the destruction of this harmony. So I think it's really important to emphasize this, and art as a public, a form of public life is the one that can be a kind of avant-garde of this experience. This experience has to be kind of, how to say, sappique, has to be, has be a kind of needle, has to be a kind of punch. So this is why I call this project Nuit Blanche, the needle of the midnight. So, meaning that nobody can actually sleep well. That's very important. When you go to an exhibition, you go home, you say, oh, I sleep well tonight. And I think it's a very, very bad exhibition. It's important to say that you just don't sleep that night, right? So, one of these, among these projects, one of them, actually I don't have the image here, Francesco, actually was a part of this, one of the exhibitions. And then he was really truly making people unhappy, because he was having an installation with a very big projection of incredible images, and especially these images are actually about digging a tunnel, a hole. And he not only showed you the image of digging a hole, but also literally digging a hole in that place. So he destroyed basically a part of the city by digging a hole. I don't have the image here because I didn't know Francesco was here. Anyway, so next time. So and then not far from the spirit of Francesco, or actually the opposite of Francesco's spirit, I decided actually to test one thing. And when we talk about art being a kind of public form, being public art, of course it has to do with democracy. It has to do with what makes a society democratic. How much the audience, and not only audience, but they're also creators, how they also participate in the process of making things and making the scene. So, of course, you have this very naive idea from the 60s, even earlier, that public is a part of the participation of public. It's a part of the making of the conceptual tradition, right? The conceptual creation and so on. So we have a lot of very public performances and so on. But and then I was asking in the year of 2004, what is the most democratic form? In the meantime, the most experimental form, and the most avant-garde way of making art. So at the time it was, this doesn't exist. And we start having a small mobile phone, but there was no image, right? You have a tiny screen like this. But what we had is actually was the beginning, or was the moment that when the DV, the digital video cameras, small cameras, become a mainstream consumer product. So a lot of families, a lot of people are having these cameras, and they would film their everyday life, or the birth of their baby, the growth of the baby, and so on. And then at the time it was not yet possible to put them online because the internet was too slow. So they would actually share the videos by sending tapes as well. And we have, I don't think now in the art school you have these tapes anymore. You still have some, right?
Library books.
Yes. So anyway, so that was the time that was the DV time. So I just said, okay, why don't we just do something to do experiments with the DV camera and the DV video? So I was thinking, how to test this, the real creativity of normal people. Number one is to make a mess. Mixed up professional artists and normal video makers, namely, any grandparents or kids that document, film their everyday life, or someone travels and so on. And then, of course, it's about the night. It's about Nuit Blanche. So I just said, okay, let's try one thing. So together with my assistant, we organized one thing, is to publish a public announcement in the newspapers and the art magazines and also normal newspapers to call people to send their video clips and to participate in the competition, and under a certain conditions. The condition is, number one, the title, the content has to do with the life in the midnight. What do you do during the midnight? The second thing is, it should not be longer than 3 minutes. And then the third thing is, you send your video with your name, your address, but without any CV. So nobody knows who sends it. So basically, I did an open call, mixed up with a selection of other, more, some works that as a reference. And then 90% of these works, actually, I think we selected 150 videos, are actually contribution from the public. And the public actually includes normal people and also a lot of young artists, even older artists. And then they end up, the selection, so we spent 3 months maybe, sitting behind the screen, the monitor, and watch all the tapes. And finally, we selected 2 people, me and my assistant. Basically, I had to watch everything. I think we received 3,000 tapes or something. So we selected 150 among these 3,000. So that was really funny. And then we put it in the public space. The public space is the university site of Jesu. And if you know the Jesu University campus, there's a kind of open gallery between the city and the campus. So there was a very long corridor. So we set up how many? 20 screens. Each screen is 10 meters by 6, I think. So we have 200 meters of screening, showing all this 150 videos. And there was, during the night, running like a really official kind of video festival. And I was standing there and watching who are coming. And I met, of course, some artists I knew who said, oh, I was selected, I'm very happy. And then also a lot of people who brought their parents, their uncles, their aunts, their cousins, or whatever. We don't know who they are. They were so proud to say, well, we are in the new launch. So that was the first Dazibao.
It is a reinvention of Dazibao.
Yeah. So that was 200 meters long. And so that explains why in Istanbul I wanted to do it in a different way. Yeah. So, and then a couple of years we can see more images. Some are very, very sophisticated, some are very, very rough, but really interesting. There's a really interesting kind of contrast between different approaches to the life and midnight, and also the open corpus international. It's not only from the French, so there's a lot of contribution from other places, and also they created a very interesting kind of membrane between the city and the projection. So there's a really integral kind of connection between the changing landscape and the changing views of the videos. And then as another part of the Dazibao idea was actually, I invited Thomas Hichel, one of the most, at the time he was famous, but he was not so famous as today. And Thomas, actually I had a long story with Thomas working from 93 already, doing some very interesting, crazy projects. And then for the new launch 2004, actually I said to Thomas, let's do something again crazy. And he proposed one thing. Actually I have a part of the Palais as the site. So Thomas said, okay, I have an idea. And he was at the time doing these monuments about philosophy, philosophers and thinkers and so on. And then he said, I want to do something called the 24-hour Foucault. And what is the 24-hour Foucault? Actually, he took over a part of the Palais Tokyo, a huge room, maybe 5 times bigger than the Kunsthalle. So putting up his own collage of Dazibao, which is basically the pages of Foucault's books, and then making a huge library, mixing up with his cardboard objects, and then created a meeting room again with the Scotch tapes and cardboard to make this public hearing place. And there's a huge meeting room right here. And then every hour he will invite, for 24 hours, one researcher from the world coming to give a talk. So during 24 hours, there's a non-stop talking about Foucault. And then people can come and spend time, and they can also go to the next room. There's a bookstore, there's a library, there's a place to to talk, to rest, to eat, to drink, and so on. So this is like a living place about Foucault. And so there was another form of Dazibao, with a participation of professional researchers and the public, and they can have direct confrontations surrounding the question raised by Foucault, of course. And then it goes to Istanbul. As Adnan said, in 2007, actually 2005, I was invited by the Istanbul Cultural Foundation, İKSV, to curate the 2007 Istanbul Biennial. And I came up with quite a crazy title. Do you remember the title?
In the age of optimism, in the age of neither.
No, actually the title has two lines. I will explain the reason. The title is called, it's not only possible but necessary, but also necessary. And then there's a second line of the title. It's called Optimism in the Age of Global Wars. So at the time, we were in total peace. 2007 was actually quite okay. But there was the war coming. Istanbul is the place actually has always been creatively generated because of confrontations, conflicts, and of course under the threat of global wars. And that global war today it continues in different forms, right? And Ukraine, of course, and now Palestine, Israel, and then also there's a lot of invisible wars within Turkey, outside Turkey, and so on. So Istanbul was the meeting place of all kind of energy produced by these confrontations, and that was a place where the most utopic modernist project has happened for the last 100 years. Now it's a bit more, right?
I mean, knowing that China, if you are saying this, we acknowledge.
Yeah, I mean the same generation of political leaders trying to create new nation states, and best as a way to claim their political, geopolitical independence. In the meantime, of course, Turkey was invented basically by some young officials from the old empire who lost the war, who saw the empire collapse. And by the way, today the conflict in the Middle East was because of the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, right? And how the British, the French occupied this area, the void, and then now, for the last 50, 60 years, they left a mess there. This continues, right? So, anyway, so Istanbul was the place that represents the new independent Turkey under Atatürk. It was in the beginning of the century, especially in the 20s, 30s, and there's the transformation of Istanbul until this time represents a very radical modernization project with a lot of conflicts and a lot of political violence and a lot of oppressions and a lot of dictatorship. In the meantime, it also has generated a intellectual elite that has helped to create the modern Turkish culture, including Sakis, for example, right? And up to this guys today here. So Turkey has one of the, for me, most extraordinary intellectual, artistic, and cultural creative class. Let's say like that. But in the meantime, also there's a very interesting infrastructure building represented by a building like this. It was the Atatürk Cultural Center. This was the first major opera theater created in the early 70s. And so I decided actually to integrate the biennial as a part of the process of critically examining the history of this evolution of this utopia and also its collapse. And around this time also the city of Istanbul was going through a period of very contradictory kind of development. On the one hand, the old city government lost power. The new one with, Erdogan as the leader took it over, kind of trying to bring back a certain kind of Islamic influence. On the other hand, there's the neoliberal capitalism coming in, and that generates a huge process of gentrification and expansion,
discrimination,
and all kinds of new social conflicts. Right? And so that was the period that I thought it was really interesting to put the biennial in the context and to see what artists can do, how much art can still be a kind of acupuncture gesture. So the first thing is to spend time to visit all these crazy people like this. And I met more and more every day. I met more and more crazy people. And the more crazy they are, the more clever they are, the more creative they are. And it's incredible. I was so excited by not only the art I saw there, but also the people and also the underground life, which is, I just said, it doesn't make sense to make a new blanche in Istanbul because it's already a new blanche, but just take the advantage to use that form. So, and then in the meantime, I also said it's very important to choose sites that represent this process of modernization. When you go to Istanbul, basically people would just go to Hagia Sophia, go to see all these historical monuments, they're extraordinary. But in the meantime, it becomes a kind of an Orientalist cliche, right? You go to the hammam. By the way, this morning we went to the hammam. It was very, very nice. Yeah. But and then I went to hammam in Istanbul, but I said, well, maybe it's not the place to put art. Before me and after me, there are many curators who use the hammam. Right? And even some people claim they are the first one who used hammam, but after many other people, it's okay. But so I just said, well, maybe it's important to look at the history of modernist and contemporary buildings, and how these places were created, and how they were under threat of destruction and transformation. So what does that represent? So this building, the Atatürk Culture Center, was created by a Turkish architect in the late 60s and was built in 71, I think. It was finished with a typical kind of design as a public cultural institution in the post-war or even between the wars, a kind of, public institution represented by the new nation state. So if you go to Beijing, you go to Moscow, you go to Tirana, you go to even in West Europe, you can see this kind of buildings.
I mean, Hakkari in Berlin is very like sister, and interestingly, not now. They used to smell very alike. They smell exactly the same.
Yeah. So, and at this moment, as I said, there's a neoliberal capitalism is coming and gentrification is happening and so on. And this building was supposed, after a few years of being very badly managed, and it was left like half a room. And they actually closed this building right before I arrived in Istanbul, and they didn't use it for any events anymore. And there was a discussion and there was a decision that they would take it down and replace it with a new building, which is kind of Frank Gehry, very fancy, iconic opera building, and with a shopping mall behind it, of course, inevitably. So I said, oh, this is very interesting. Maybe we should do something about this building, to reuse this building, to bring back the consciousness, the awareness of this existence of this building, which is the central at the Taksim, facing the Taksim Square, which is like really the most symbolic architectural gesture of the power of the new nation state. And then it was designed in a perfect way as, really like a kind of, I would say, one-party nationalist, national socialist utopian kind of a symbol. And how much this actually has impacted the making of this fantastic intellectual and cultural elite in Istanbul, in Turkey. Actually, their life have been very closely related to the history of this building. When you think about, a lot of people like Sakis or other, important artists, writers, and musicians, they spend a lot of time going here. So that was something that I've said we should maybe do something and use this place to create a project around utopia. This Ibu from Korea, he showed her utopian project. Anyway, so in this process, and there was a negotiation with the cultural authority of the city to use this building, because they closed the building, they decided to take it down. And that was actually this is supposed to be the second time they take it down. The first time, it was the building, it's all about destiny and fate. In 71, when the building was finished, a month or 2 months later, this building was burned. Because I was told the guard of the building actually was cooking behind the stage and burned the curtain. And then the building was burned down. And so they spent another 10 years or something to rebuild exactly the same thing. So this building was actually finished in the late 70s. Again, as a second reincarnation. So, and it was a perfectly interesting building. When you go in, you have this aluminium structures with typical kind of 60s kind of patterns, and behind that you have a marble and beautiful wood kind of decoration and so on. So around this, it brought up a debate. So a lot of intellectuals and cultural people suddenly noticed that, oh, this building is under threat. So they signed a petition against the dismantling of this building.
It attracted a lot of tension between the secularists and Islamists.
Yeah.
Since it's an ideological symbol of the Turkish modernity.
Absolutely.
When you're right, 2006 is a very important time.
Come here.
I need to make this footnote because Hanru coming from abroad, I think didn't really. You were fierce. You were not afraid of anything. So the things that we were afraid of or not mediating among us was happening because this is a symbol of Turkish modernity, and at that time to destroy it or preserve it is a question related with the new Islamist party, and the Islamist party is always accused with breaking the rules of Turkish modernity. So you kind of put your hand under the stove and just fire everyone around it because his building is an icon. And you're right, in a way, still it exists. It has a huge role in the Gezi time, But at that time, it was just the beginning of the Islamist regime. It was a perfect space for this tension, and this tension also still continues.
Yeah, and actually the beginning of this building was very interesting, and now what they did is actually, after maybe 10 or 15 years after my biennial, they managed to take down the building, but they kept the facade. They renewed the facade and built a new building behind it. And the irony is, it's the son of the original architect who built the building.
He just added an additional red wall.
Yes, inside.
And inside is a traditional motif that looks like a library building.
Yeah.
And another one note, in the last 5 years, during the restoration of the building, Taksim Square was like a stage. It was literally the public performance, because these mosques that Islamists wanted to erect there for a very long time was happening, and then the AKP building was demolished. So they kind of coincided this as a public performance. It was amazing. The mosque was coming up, and then you turn your back, oh, there is AKP.
Yeah. So the funny thing is actually, of course, the Islamic, or the new power wall, and also the neo-capitalist wall. So behind this building now is completely renovated and has a nice hotel, I think, in the back, and a lot of shopping mall around and so on. And then in front you have the new mosque, bigger than this one, coming up. So that's a very interesting kind of urban transformation process as a symbol of the political transition, right? And then the political transition also goes to this. It's not only political, it's economic. It's the economic model. This is a place called Image. Image is the textile market. And as you know, as a part of the Turkish modernization process, like in many so-called developing countries, Turkey was the first, one of the first, to use this strategy of producing products for export. And textile, Turkish industry was very famous in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and until the 90s actually for textile production. And now the Chinese is taking over, unfortunately. And the Chinese is losing to Vietnam, I don't know. That's a long story, but they use the same model. And so around the 50s, Istanbul was going through a big industrialization process, and a lot of migrants, talk about migrants, a lot of people from the countryside, from the eastern part of Turkey, from the Middle Eastern part of Turkey and so on, they come into Istanbul to look for work, and they actually opened a lot of small and big textile companies. And then they also created a very interesting market. And this market is 3 Turkish modernist architects. They created, it won the second prize of Angetan prize. Anyway, so this project was built on the other side of the river, of the Golden Horn. On the way going up to Hagia Sophia. And so what they did actually, they took the floor plan of the bazaar next to the mosque and reproduced here, and using at the time very, very avant-garde kind of modernist design, and to sit on this very interesting plan of bazaar. And this bazaar, every textile workers, companies would rent a small shop and sell the products there. So, and then over time, what is interesting is this expanded from textile to small electronics to other kind of products. And as a kind of testimony of the evolution of the Turkish industry from textile industry to other more contemporary productions. So you can see, go through this this shopping mall, let's say, and you can see the evolution of the different blocks. Each block represents a period of Turkish industry and economy. And then what is interesting is there's a lot of modernist sculpture being planned and integrated into the building. On the surface, I don't know if you remember, there's some relief of very modernist abstract sculptures, and also in the courtyard. And little by little, the people who use these shops, they install their own gardens here. So they would actually plant vegetables. They brought products from the countryside, from the homeland, and to plant here. So this becomes again a city, inside city, a garden inside city. So this area I discovered that one day I actually came out from the airport. I saw this place from the car. I asked Karen, my assistant, what's this? She explained me, this is the textile market and nobody cares. And it was also a question of taking it down at the time. They want to build a much more fancier building. So at the time I just, okay, let's use this place to bring back the discussion about what contemporary Turkey is made of, what's the future of this place, and what's the future of the global economy. So I created a project called World Factory, and bringing also the question about how China, the southern part of China becoming a world factory after Turkey. And the textile are made there now, the new technology products are made in this area. iPhones are made there, for example. And also you have the Chinese brand now, like Huawei and all this, right? And so I invited, I don't know, actually we went to negotiate with the management of this building, and we managed to have, I don't know, 15 shops. Of course, with the tiny budget of the Biennale, we negotiated and rented 15 shops, I think, to be a part of the Biennale exhibition. And then we invited artists to do projects inside. Of course, all these projects are related to the question of capital, to the question of economic and globalization of, industry, post-industry, and so on. So this is the project of Sora Kim, another Korean artist, the project is called Capital Plus. What she does actually, she set up a bank, a kind of bank in the shop, and people can bring their objects here. For example, I bring a pen and make a deposit there, like in the bank, you put the money in the bank, and after 3 months, you are supposed, you sign the paper, and then you're supposed to get a pen which would be 3 centimeters longer than the original pen. So there was a funny game. Anyway, so she created this fictive banking system, being the entrance of this textile market, and then it goes on. And actually Adnan was involved with making an art space at the time. So
it's still continuing.
It's still going on. So because of this, and this part of this part of the city becomes a part of the art activity place. And then the next one is the main,
which doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. It's called the Anthropon.
The new urban project, Galata Port, destroyed.
Yeah, and this is as you know, Istanbul is the harbor city. Well, it was the main harbor of Middle East, and all the boats coming from Black Sea to going out to Mediterranean has to go through Istanbul. And even you see the James Bond thing, right? You have the Russian nuclear submarine going down, under the Bosphorus, which is very fantastic story. Anyway, so that's the place overlooking the Bosphorus. So it's an anthropo, and then, of course, anthropo in French. Actually, it's a translation of French. Entrepot. It's very simple. And so, and I created a project called the Anthropolis, which is actually using it as a city. Police is a city. So, but I'm not going to talk about the details of this.
But maybe we can see Sarkis and the Dream Factory.
Yeah, I would. And then the next one is actually, I said Istanbul is a new blanche place. So I decided to create a space in the Anthropo in which people can come and see oversee the Bosphorus, the sea, basically, from a different point of view. So we built a second level in the Anthropo so people can go up and spend the night there. And I invited a few artists to do site-specific project. This is some Samoa's storytelling project. So you can spend the night every night you can just actually, without going to see the biennial, you go to here and then you can go up and sleep there and watch the boat passing by. And it was, of course, a nightmare for the administration for the organizers, because we have to have people oversee the guards to keep the space open overnight. So that changed institutionally, changed the structure of the biennial in a way. So
one addition, maybe you don't know this, I will inform you about this. Few modernist architects appreciate your Dream Factory project a lot because they have fighted for the pedestrian way, not being cut through the arbor. So ideally, for very socialist and communist discussions happened in the time that the city should be organized in a way that you can take a walk from the old city and just come down to Beşiktaş or any arbor. So you don't need to pay. But the new Galata projects now, currently, you don't even see the sea. The shopping malls, the museums, they close the seaside. And this was offering access to the sea, to the public at night. Imagine also an art institution open at night is a miracle for a lot of us. We tested, we tried out this timing. But are you But for a lot of architects from Istanbul really appreciated this access to the city because it's a democratic right to walk by the seaside.
So anyway, and then we go on to the next one. So again, coming back to the idea of the Dazibao. Actually, I called in Paris the New Blanche with the screening. Actually, the subtitle of the section is called the Image Dazibao. So it was using the video images as a kind of Dazibao for people to express themselves. So in Istanbul, I said, last time I did it was too much, watching 3,000 videos. So I wanted to give this job to the younger curators. They are much more, they're much more dynamic, much more creative than me. So they would do much better work. So we invited Adnan and a few other 5 curators.
Volga and Jen.
Yes.
Yeah.
5 curators, young curators, to do this job, to do the open call and then selected the videos to be projected. And the idea is, instead of having like in Paris, 200 meters with a lot of projectors, very expensive, we did it in the most economic way, but also trying to bring this to all around the city, everywhere.
I think also guerrilla. It was very guerrilla.
It's called the urban guerrilla kind of project. So I spent some time with the young curators and also with a couple of Dutch artists, Big van der Poel, to visit the city. And as you know, Istanbul at the time was maybe 150 kilometers long. It's a huge city. And what we usually visit is a very small portion of the center. So we travel through the city, going to see different kind of quartier, different kind of districts, and from the most Islamic to the most bourgeois, the most westernized to all kind of places. And of course, in between you have Armenian, you have Russian, you have Ukrainian, you have a lot of immigrants, new immigrants coming and so on. And so we decided to put this program, not only having young curators to curate the program, but also put them to different parts of the city. So we selected, 35 venues or something like that across the city. And then with a very poor projector, a very basic projector, and then carried by a very basic truck, not a fancy Tesla pickup. It's a very old-fashioned pickup, putting the the projector on the car and travel around the city every night. I think it goes to some venue. Every night it goes to some venue and stay there for a couple of days. And also before that we have to negotiate with the local administrators and of course the local leaders. Sometimes the gangsters. We have to negotiate with them and say, okay, we wanted to do a contemporary art projection here. And those guys say, what they're talking about, right? So basically, you spend time with them and have a drink, and sometimes they don't drink because they're Islamists. Others drink more than anyone else, and so on. So you have to deal with these people, and then at the end, we managed to have 35 venues, and every night there's some projection happening there. So this is some views. Different. So you can see the difference. This was before the textile market, and then this is a completely another area. You can see how it is. So basically, it went on. So this is a mobile Dazibao that brings contemporary art, sometimes the most crazy works, to people who never expected to come to see the biennial. So this is what has happened, and then in between we come back to Saki's office. I met Saki's in 1990 when I arrived in Paris, and then in different locations we worked together. And this was in 2006 when I went to San Francisco, and the first exhibition I curated was, I think there's a book there, the blue one, that one. Saki's, just là. So this was the book that Saki's, the first exhibition of Saki's in San Francisco Institute. The title is called Alive and After, and then this was inside the installation room, and actually, of course, being a small art university gallery, we didn't have much money to do in a huge installation and so on. But Sakis had a wonderful idea. He said, let's do one thing. It's a kind of retrospective, a festival of my own films. So he actually provided us 40 films by him, and put on small monitors, and put on the stage like a platform for music. So inside it, and then it tells about, of course, all the works, some are related to this project too. And then we also set up a workshop for the students to do watercolor in the water. Anyway, so, and then above the gallery, he proposes to have a neon piece. This neon piece was sitting on the roof of the gallery. It's written Sinan Louis Khan. And this is the two most important architects for Sakis as his, let's say, mentor, as his icon, and so on. So Sinan, of course, Sinan is the Turkish architect who actually basically invent a kind of Armenian, kind of a mosque, but based on the Armenian church. Sakis is actually Armenian, from an Armenian family, born in Istanbul. Right? And so for him, the image of the Armenian church is a very important, let's say, not only memory, but also the prototype of his idea about slaves. So Sinan, of course, is also the most important architect in the Turkish or Ottoman architecture history, right? So Louis Kahn, of course, is also the most important, one of the most important modernist architects from America, who not only invents the incredible architecture, but also worked in the making of the new nation states. Like Corbusier, other generation, he created the parliament of Pakistan. And so for Sakis, to connect Turkey, Istanbul, and San Francisco together is the way to, because Louis Kahn also has a very famous campus building in the south of California, in La Jolla, the University of San Francisco in the south. So he actually connected these two together, and then we created this piece. And then for Istanbul Biennial, he said, there's one place that people never go. I think it's very important to go, to remind people we still have this. We should preserve this place, which is the Atatürk Library. The Atatürk Library is situated behind the AKM, the opera house, the theater, but hardly anyone knew it because it's on the slope behind, hidden behind the park. So only people who are informed will go there, and normal tourists and other people will not go. And then down there's a stadium. People go to the stadium instead of going to the library. So he said, I wanted to bring the light to this place, to revitalize, to reactivate this library. So we managed to put the same sign, bringing back from San Francisco to Istanbul. So there's the same piece. It's another way of using art as a kind of Dazibao, a kind of announcement of something. So that's Sakis, and then Sakis. This piece actually was created in 2015. The first edition was inspired by the Gezi Park of occupation, and especially that was the time that now it becomes completely touristic. Actually, this is behind the Gezi Park when you come down towards the harbor. There's this stairway. Actually, was the gay pride place. The gay community claimed this stairway, which was very old, and then painted into rainbow. And Sakis was very much inspired and made a beautiful piece about this. And then in 2015, actually, I organized an exhibition about Istanbul in the Maxi. Actually, I became the artistic director of Maxi in end of 13. And so the first thing was to create a program. One part of the program is to connect Rome with the Mediterranean cities. So starting from, so we did over the last 7-8 years, we did 5 or 6 major exhibitions related to, from Iran to Istanbul to Beirut to northern part of the Mediterranean, Yugoslavia. And we have and also through Tel Aviv and so on. So we did a series of exhibitions, including one about Istanbul, which is called Passion, Istanbul, Passion, Joy, and Fury. So there was the show that I invited, I don't know, 50 artists from Istanbul and something, and then starting with the protesting the occupation in Gezi and the post-Gezi period from different aspects. So Sakis actually brought in this wonderful piece, and then at the end I managed to get it into the collection of the maxi. So you have a bigger version of this now in the maxi. And don't have time to talk about maxi, but maybe we don't have time. Okay, good. Just give you an impression of what I was about to talk about. Anyway.
Nobody move.